Welcome to Singapore Property Talk Law. I'm Damien.
And I'm Serene.
Today, we're diving into a really complex and, well, quite concerning situation unfolding right now in Singapore's business world.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We've got these serious claims of coercion, threats, even what's being called a $500 million corporate raid.
And the key players are UOB, the major Singaporean bank, and their former client, Yankee Logistics.
Right, specifically through the voice of its ex-CEO, Ken Koh.
It's a situation that's, it's grabbed a lot of attention pretty quickly, Damien, and for good reason, I think. It really touches on some fundamental issues.
Like how banks operate.
Exactly. And, the protections clients have, or maybe don't have.
For sure. So, to get a handle on this, we've looked at a few key sources. There's a pretty lively Reddit thread discussing it all.
Gives you a sense of the public chatter.
Then there's the response from the online citizen, TOC, after they got a legal letter from UOB.
Right, their side of the story.
And crucially, actual news reports. Singapore Law Watch, the Straits Times, reporting that UOB plans to sue.
So they're not taking this lightly.
Definitely not. So our mission today, for everyone listening, is to really unpack the core of these accusations, understand how UOB is hitting back, and think about the bigger picture here.
Without getting lost in speculation, though.
Absolutely. And importantly, we're not taking sides. We're just looking at what's being said. Okay, Serene, let's start with the allegations themselves, the ones from the ex-CEO, Ken Koh.
Okay. So based on that Reddit discussion and TOC's response, the claims really originate from a statutory declaration. Ken Koh made this statement back on February 25th.
A statutory declaration? That sounds pretty formal.
It is, yeah. It's essentially a sworn statement. You make it before a commissioner of oaths confirming it's true. So it gives his claims a certain legal weight right from the get-go.
Okay, so what's in this declaration? What's he actually accusing UOB of?
Well, some pretty explosive stuff, Damien. He alleges coercion and threats from UOB executives, and he says this started way back in 2016.
2016? Wow, so this has been brewing for a while.
Apparently so. And he specifically links it to the renewal of a huge mortgage loan, $130 million.
Okay, a big loan. What's the issue?
Here's where it gets really concerning. Koh claims UOB tied this vital loan renewal to him accepting convertible bonds.
So, take these bonds or you don't get your loan renewed.
That seems to be the implication of his claim, yes.
And these bonds, were they dodgy somehow?
Well, according to Koh, yeah. He claims UOB pressured him into taking these convertible bonds, and listen to this, with a 27% annual interest rate.
27%? Per year?
That's what he claims. He even says it was more than 10 times the company's entire yearly profit at the time.
Good grief. In, 2016? Interest rates weren't exactly sky high then, were they?
No, generally not, which is why that figure, if accurate, definitely raises, serious questions about how fair those terms really were.
Absolutely. It sounds like he's painting a picture of UOB using that loan renewal as massive leverage.
Kind of boxing him in financially, yeah. That seems to be the narrative. But the allegations actually go further.
Oh, what else?
Koh also claims UOB actively sabotaged a potential investment from Chinese state-owned enterprises, specifically SEI and GDPS.
Sabotage. So not just making things difficult, but actively undermining a potential rescue deal.
That's the allegation. It's a pretty serious escalation, if true. He also claims UOB discouraged Yankee from even looking for refinancing elsewhere, like from DBS or CIMB.
Wow, so effectively cutting off other potential lifelines, too.
That's the picture he paints, a narrative of UOB allegedly controlling all the financial levers.
And what does he say was the motive behind all this alleged pressure and sabotage?
Well, Koh claims the endgame for UOB was to force a distressed sale of Yankee Holdings shares.
A distressed sale,
Yep.
Meaning selling cheap because the company's desperate.
Exactly. He claims the offer for his shares absolutely plummeted from $139 million down to just $1. $1. And he says this crash happened right after UOB issued a letter of default against the company.
Okay, hold on. So the key points seem to be using the loan renewal leverage, pushing these super high-interest bonds, blocking other investors, and then hitting them with a default.
That's the sequence of events, according to Koh's declaration, yes. Potentially setting the stage for this dramatic drop in share value.
And this default letter,
Yeah.
was Yankee actually defaulting at that point?
That's another huge point of contention. Koh insists the company was still making its loan repayments when UOB issued that default letter.
If that's true, that's massive. Because a default letter can trigger all sorts of problems, right?
Absolutely. He alleges it triggered cross defaults. Basically, defaulting on the UOB loan automatically meant defaulting on loans they had with a bunch of other banks: DBS, CIMB, ANZ, Phillips Capital, CCBI.
Oh, man. Like a domino effect.
Precisely. He describes it as a kind of deliberate financial strangulation orchestrated by UOB.
And did anyone benefit from this, according to Koh?
Yes. He points the finger at a company called Logos. He describes them as a favored client of UOB.
Logos. Okay. And how did they allegedly benefit?
Koh claims Logos snapped up Yankee Holdings warehouses at a significantly depressed price, precisely because of the situation UOB allegedly created. He puts a figure on it, says Logos made about $104 million from this deal.
$104 million profit from buying assets cheap. Assets that only became cheap because of the alleged UOB actions.
That's the accusation. And the ultimate fallout, according to Koh, Yankee Logistics, his family's $500 million business, shut down, and around 300 local jobs were lost.
Wow, that's devastating, if his account is accurate. A huge alleged impact.
It really is. And there's one more serious claim he makes, a breach of banking secrecy. He alleges a UOB executive leaked confidential information.
Banking secrecy.
Rare.
That's another major red flag.
Definitely. And interestingly, the Reddit thread mentions that the ex-CEO even made a TikTok video about all this.
A TikTok video, so he's really taking this public.
Seems like it. It just shows how these things can spread now, beyond traditional channels, using social media to get his side of the story out there.
Right. But that Reddit thread, it wasn't all just supporting Koh's claims, was it? Were there other perspectives?
No, you're right. It's important to note the counter-arguments. Some users on Reddit suggested Yankee was actually struggling financially before all this, going back to 2016.
Okay, so maybe the company was already in trouble, regardless of UOB's actions.
That's the suggestion from some. They even pointed to a high court judgment against Koh.
A judgment against him? What was that about?
Well, another user clarified this point, actually. They said the high court case mentioned was about granting judicial management orders for Yankee.
Judicial management. That's when a court appoints someone to try and save a struggling company, right?
Exactly. So it does indicate Yankee was facing serious financial problems. But crucially, it doesn't automatically prove or disprove Koh's specific allegations against UOB.
Right. A company can be in trouble for many reasons. The question here is whether UOB's alleged actions caused or unfairly accelerated the collapse.
Precisely. The judicial management order confirms distress, but not necessarily the cause of that distress, as alleged by Koh.
And what about those leaked audio recordings mentioned in the TOC articles? Did Reddit users pick up on that?
Yes, definitely. Some users highlighted how serious that leaked audio sounded. Apparently, a senior bank officer, allegedly from UOB, implied that the bank had some kind of regulatory protection.
Regulatory protection, like MAS wouldn't touch them.
That seems to be the implication raised in the discussion based on the alleged audio. If true, that's obviously hugely concerning for the integrity of the whole financial system.
Yeah, any hint of undue influence or a regulator looking the other way, that would send shockwaves, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It raises fundamental questions about a level playing field, public trust,
Okay.
the works.
Okay. So that's pretty detailed rundown of the allegations from Koh's side, including the nuances and counterpoints raised online. Now, the big question, how has UOB responded to all this?
Well, as you probably expect, UOB has come out swinging. According to the news reports from Singapore Law Watch and the Straits Times, they've flatly denied everything.
Flatly denied.
Yep. They issued a statement on March 28th calling Koh's claims baseless and defamatory. Very strong language. No ambiguity there.
Baseless and defamatory.
Okay.
And have they left it at that? Just words.
Oh, no. They announced on April 1st that they're taking legal action. They're suing Ken Koh himself.
Suing the ex-CEO. Why?
They say it's because he failed to retract his allegations and apologize after they asked him to back on March 26th.
So they gave him a chance to take it back. He didn't, and now they're suing him. UOB is clearly defending its reputation very aggressively here.
Extremely aggressively. And it doesn't stop with Koh. They're also suing the Online Citizen TOC and its editor, Mr. Xu Yuanchen.
Suing the news outlet, too.
Yeah.
For publishing the story.
Exactly. UOB states the legal action against TOC is necessary because, in their view, the published allegations are false and defamatory. They specifically mention the articles, the statutory declaration, those supporting documents, and the audio recordings we talked about.
Wow, so they're going after both the source of the allegations and the platform that reported them. That's a major move. Okay, so how has TOC reacted to being sued? Are they backing down?
Not at all, Damien. Their response, outlined in their letter back to UOB's lawyers, is pretty firm. They're standing by their reporting.
Standing by it. On what grounds?
Their main argument is that their articles relied directly on sworn testimony, Koh's statutory declaration, and what they saw as corroborating corporate documents.
So they're saying, we reported on a legal document and supporting evidence?
Essentially, yes. They argue they follow journalistic practice by reporting on what appeared to be credible sources, including that legally affirmed statement from Koh.
And did TOC say anything about their interactions with UOB before publishing? Did they give the bank a chance to comment?
Yes, and this is a really interesting part of their response. TOC claims they gave UOB almost 2 weeks' notice before publishing. They say they sent a media query on March 14th, even providing UOB with the statutory declaration itself.
2 weeks' notice, including the actual sworn statement. That's quite a long lead time in media terms.
It is. And TOC states that despite this, UOB didn't provide any substantive response. No point-by-point rebuttal, no request for more time to prepare a detailed reply. Nothing concrete, according to TOC.
And did they try again?
TOC says yes. They apparently contacted UOB again on March 27th, right before publication, offering another chance to respond. Again, they claim UOB didn't provide a substantive reply.
So TOC's narrative is, we gave you plenty of warning and multiple opportunities to respond properly before we published.
Exactly. They seem to be preemptively countering any potential claim from UOB that they were blindsided or rushed.
Okay, so how does TOC counter the core claim of defamation then?
They argue that UOB's public response has just been a blanket denial. They say UOB hasn't actually engaged with the specific details of the evidence TOC presented, like the audio recordings or the points in the statutory declaration.
So TOC is saying a general, it's not true, isn't enough to prove defamation when there's specific sworn evidence presented.
Pretty much. They're arguing the onus is on UOB to show where the reporting, based on the evidence provided, including to UOB beforehand, was factually wrong. They even suggest if UOB thinks the statutory declaration itself is false, they should challenge that directly in court or provide counter evidence.
Right. Makes sense. It's a show-us-the-proof kind of stance.
Precisely. And TOC strongly defends their actions as responsible journalism conducted in the public interest.
Public interest because?
Because of the huge financial implications. The questions raised about regulatory oversight and, the fundamental importance of trust in major banks.
They also seem to frame UOB's legal action quite strongly, didn't they?
They did. TOC characterized UOB's legal letter as potentially disproportionate, even intimidatory. They suggested it might be an attempt to chill investigative journalism and discourage scrutiny of powerful entities.
That's a serious counter-accusation, framing it as a potential threat to press freedom.
It definitely raises the stakes rhetorically. But interestingly, TOC also says they're still willing to publish a full statement or clarification from UOB. So the door's still open, apparently, for UOB to give their detailed side of the story via TOC's platform.
An olive branch amidst the legal battle.
Perhaps. Or just reinforcing their claim of responsible reporting. There was also a little procedural point TOC raised. Something about who the legal letter was actually sent to.
Ah, yes, I remember reading that.
Yeah, TOC noted that UOB's initial demand letter was addressed to a company that apparently stopped operating TOC back in 2022. The operation supposedly moved to a different entity in Taiwan.
So they're questioning if the legal notice was even served correctly in the first place.
It seems like a potential preliminary legal hurdle they're pointing out. Adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so we have Koh's allegations, UOB's strong denials and lawsuits, TOC's defense. What about the regulators? Is anyone else involved? Specifically, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS.
Yes. According to that Straits Times report, MAS has officially stated that they are looking into the allegations made by Mr. Koh.
Looking into it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the financial watchdog is aware and taking steps.
That's right. It signals that this isn't just a private fight anymore. The regulator is now involved, assessing the situation to see if any rules were broken.
Which could obviously lead to further investigations or actions, depending on what they find.
Exactly. It raises the stakes considerably for everyone involved.
Okay, Serene, let's try and pull this all together. For our listeners, what's the absolute core conflict we're seeing here?
Well, Damien, at its heart, you've got this really high-stakes clash. On one side, an ex-CEO, Ken Koh, making incredibly serious claims against a major bank, UOB. He's alleging really improper conduct, coercion, threats, sabotage that he says destroyed his multi-million-dollar family business and cost hundreds of jobs.
A devastating accusation.
Truly. Then on the other side, you have UOB pushing back extremely hard. They're saying Koh's story is completely untrue, baseless, and defamatory. And they're not just saying it, they're backing it up with lawsuits against both Koh and the news outlet, TOC, that published his claims.
And TOC is standing firm, defending their reporting based on Koh's sworn statement and their prior communication with UOB.
Right. And hovering over all of this is the regulator, MAS, confirming they are now officially looking into these serious allegations.
So hopefully for everyone listening, that gives you a much clearer picture of this complex situation, who's involved, what the core arguments are from each side, and the legal and regulatory dimensions. It really shows how intricate these big financial disputes can become, especially when they spill out into the public domain.
Absolutely, Damien. It really puts a spotlight on, the complex relationship between banks and their clients, especially when big money is involved or a business hits rough patches.
Yeah, the power dynamics involved.
Exactly. And the potential for major disagreements. Plus, it highlights the media's role, right? Reporting on these sensitive issues, balancing public interest with potential legal risks.
It certainly does. And this whole saga really leaves you pondering some big questions, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, like, what are the fundamental duties of a bank toward its clients, especially struggling ones? How do you balance the bank's need to protect its interests with the client's need for fair treatment?
That power dynamic again.
Right. And what's the media's role in all this? How do they report responsibly on allegations like these? And crucially, how are these incredibly serious disputes ultimately resolved fairly and transparently?
Yeah, those are key questions. This case really is a fascinating real-world example of finance, law, media, and regulation all colliding.
Definitely one to watch as it unfolds. It'll be very interesting to see where the legal actions go and what, if anything, comes out of the MES review.